So under my leadership, economic growth is exploding to numbers unheard of. They've never had them before in recent times, and now, and we're just getting started. You know, the great, big, beautiful bill, which is no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security for our seniors. Do we have any seniors in here? Do we have any seniors?
The music swelled, flags filled the stage, and the room surged with energy before a single policy word was spoken, instantly locking the crowd into a shared emotional moment built around patriotism and belonging. The opening minutes of the event leaned heavily on symbols of national pride, with repeated references to the flag, the anthem, and the idea of America as something sacred that must be defended and celebrated. Supporters responded loudly, waving banners and chanting familiar slogans, creating a rally atmosphere that felt less like a policy forum and more like a reaffirmation of identity. This emotional framing set the tone for everything that followed, signaling that the speech would focus not only on governance but on loyalty, unity, and a particular vision of what it means to be American. Donald Trump's return to Iowa was presented as more than just another campaign stop. Throughout the speech, he treated the state as a cornerstone of his political journey, repeatedly reminding the audience that Iowa had played a decisive role in his rise and his comeback. He recounted past caucus victories in vivid detail, portraying them as moments when the political establishment was caught off guard by grassroots energy. Iowa, in this telling, was not just a state on the calendar, but a symbol of resilience and vindication. Trump framed his appearance there as proof that his movement had endured setbacks and attacks, only to return stronger. By placing Iowa at the heart of his narrative, he reinforced the idea that ordinary voters, not party elites, were the true drivers of his political fortunes. From there, Trump moved into sweeping claims about his electoral record, presenting his past victories as historically unmatched. He asserted that he had dominated the Electoral College, performed exceptionally well in the popular vote, and won an unprecedented number of counties across the country. Swing states, he argued, had broken decisively in his favor, demonstrating broad national appeal rather than narrow regional strength. These assertions were delivered confidently and repeatedly, designed to leave the impression of overwhelming success. Whether supporters viewed these claims as literal statistics or symbolic expressions of momentum, the message was clear. Trump positioned himself as a Republican who had expanded the party's reach rather than limited it. A major portion of his speech focused on drawing a sharp contrast between his record and that of President Joe Biden. Trump painted a picture of a nation in decline under the current administration, citing inflation, border challenges, international instability, and economic anxiety. He described rising prices as a daily burden on families, portrayed the southern border as chaotic, and argued that America's global standing had weakened. These themes were woven together into a broader narrative of mismanagement and lost respect. Trump then cast his own leadership as the corrective force, claiming that many of these problems had already been reversed or were in the process of being fixed through his policies and influence. Economic issues formed the backbone of the speech, with Trump offering a series of upbeat claims about a turnaround he attributed to his approach. He spoke of falling inflation, rising wages, and markets reaching new highs, presenting these indicators as evidence that confidence had returned. According to Trump, investment was flowing back into the United States at record levels, driven by tariffs and trade policies that favored domestic production. He cited major corporate expansions and factory openings as proof that companies were choosing to build at home rather than abroad. The economy, in this narrative, was not just recovering but booming, and Trump framed himself as the central reason why. Tax policy was another area where Trump aimed to connect directly with everyday concerns. He promoted ideas such as eliminating taxes on tips and overtime pay, removing taxes on Social Security benefits, and introducing new deductions for Americans who purchase domestically made vehicles. These proposals were framed as practical steps to put more money back into the pockets of workers, retirees, and families. Trump also promised large tax refunds for households, suggesting that his approach would reward work and loyalty to American-made products. The emphasis was consistently on simplicity and direct benefit, rather than complex policy details. Support for farmers and rural communities received special attention, particularly given the Iowa setting. Trump spoke at length about agriculture, highlighting ethanol policy and his support for year-round E15 fuel sales. He described trade deals that, in his view, reopened foreign markets to American farm exports after years of disadvantage. Deregulation was presented as a relief from burdensome rules that had driven up costs for farmers, while farm aid programs were framed as lifelines during difficult periods. Trump also pointed to lower fuel prices and reduced equipment costs as tangible benefits for rural America, reinforcing his message that his policies understood and respected agricultural communities. On border security and crime, Trump's tone grew more forceful. He claimed the southern border was now effectively closed, describing sharp reductions in illegal crossings and drug trafficking. Crime, he said, was at historic lows, and communities were safer as a result of stronger enforcement. Trump praised law enforcement and highlighted what he described as a surge in military and police recruitment, framing it as renewed respect for service and authority. These claims were delivered as proof that a tough approach had restored order and confidence, contrasting sharply with his portrayal of the previous administration's policies. Foreign policy and military strength rounded out the policy-heavy sections of the speech. Trump emphasized rebuilding the military, increasing readiness, and restoring what he called global respect for American power. He referenced the designation of drug cartels as terrorist organizations and spoke about aggressive measures against Iran's nuclear ambitions. Overseas operations were framed as decisive actions that signaled strength rather than hesitation. The underlying message was that peace, in Trump's view, comes from power and clarity, not compromise or uncertainty. As the speech moved toward its conclusion, Trump shifted from policy claims to political mobilization. He warned that upcoming midterm elections would be critical, arguing that losing control of Congress would undo the progress he described. Supporters were urged to stay engaged, vote, and treat the moment as pivotal for the country's future. He framed the current period as the beginning of a new golden age, but one that required constant defense against political opponents. The rally ended much as it began, with high energy and a sense of urgency, leaving supporters feeling both affirmed and called to action. Taken together, the event was less about introducing new ideas and more about reinforcing a familiar narrative of decline and revival, loyalty and opposition, loss and restoration. Trump presented himself as the central figure capable of delivering economic strength, national pride, and global respect, while casting his opponents as obstacles to that vision. Whether viewed as a campaign rally, a policy speech, or a symbolic homecoming, the address underscored how deeply Trump continues to frame politics as a story of identity and struggle. If you want to keep up with more reports like this as events continue to unfold, hit the subscribe button for future uploads.